Remember that TV show way back when? I think it was in the 80s. Amanda Keller was on it. It was called Beyond 2000, where they used to show us about all the technology that would be happening into the future. The start of the show had flying cars. Back to the Future, of course, had as a belief that by the year 2000 and something, we'd be having hoverboards to get around in. The closest it seems we ever got was putting a monorail into Sydney into the 1980s, because we are almost a quarter of the way into the 21st century, and this is what Australians were being told to do tonight.
The East Coast power system is running on empty.
Warnings of rolling blackouts across eastern Australia.
Demand was going to far outstrip supply, sparking those fears of blackouts.
Both states have been in panic mode.
Answering the pleas of power companies and cutting unnecessary use and turning off unnecessary appliances.
Demand across New South Wales at lunchtime today was 8,000 megawatts, and that is only 7,000 in comparison that was being generated here.
The Australian energy market operator warned of further supply reserve shortfalls in Queensland and New South Wales tonight.
But the new Energy Minister, Chris Bowen, was talking out of both sides of his mouth. He was telling people that unless you really need to use it, you should probably turn it off, while simultaneously trying the Jedi mind trick, you cannot see a power crisis here.
Yesterday, there were concerns about load shedding and the situation in Queensland. Through very active management by AEMO, that situation was avoided. I've been in regular contact with AEMO today, who also advised me that they are confident the situation can be and will be avoided in New South Wales and Victoria, in particular, in coming days.
Oh, I trust him with our energy future, don't you? And remember the geniuses at, including the boss of the, Sally McManus, the boss of the ACTU, who, when Warragamba Dam was too full and there was a fear that it was going to flood into low-lying areas of the Hawkesbury on the fringes of Sydney, she openly asked people whether the smart thing to do was for everyone to turn their taps on, as if simultaneously, if everyone flushed the toot at once, the dam would instantly go down. Well, the same level of genius thinking was on show today when members of the press corps started asking the Energy Minister about whether or not Vivid in Sydney should be happening at a time when other people are being told to turn off unnecessary lights. Now, of course, this is a winter festival where as many landmarks as possible can be lit up, and it's a beautiful thing to see. It brings millions of dollars into the centre of Sydney at a time when it's cold and people don't want to be there. So what was the Energy Minister's response to, should we turn off Vivid tonight?
Well, I mean, I think it's probably coming to an end soon, isn't it? Anyway, it's been, I'm not quite sure of the dates, but I know it's been going for a little while. I'm not here particularly to comment on Vivid or the actions. It's an important event in Sydney's calendar. Many people have made plans to see it for however long it runs. I'm not here to provide any commentary on that. It's a general comment that anything which is superfluous, isn't necessary, think about switching it off.
Seriously, this is where we are. This is where we are almost a quarter of the way into the 21st century, where turn lots of other things off because the supply is not going to be there. And if there's extra lights that are on to light up places like the Sydney Opera House and the Sydney Harbour Bridge, we should turn them off too. Seriously? This is the brains trust of the people who run the joint and the people who ask about the joint. You notice, by the way, that nobody is asking the Labor Party about its promise that by 2025, the end of its first term, household bills will be cut by $275. Is that from election day or is that from peak pricing? Of course, no one cares because it was all one of those things that you say to get elected. Just like, despite the fact that the reality of their move towards 80+% renewable energy was going to exacerbate the overall problem that we currently do now, just pretend that 600,000 jobs are going to drop from the sky. You see, that's the reality of where we sit. If you point out the problems with transition, you are a climate denier. If you point out the difficulties of not having a safety net for the power network, you are a climate denier. All, of course, not true. Transitions are painful. Globalisation produced millions of people who had manufacturing jobs who didn't end up having them as they were shipped off to the third world. Those people had every right to stay angry. But the comfortable people, who are the ones running the show or talking to the ones running the show, well, of course, their jobs don't get disrupted at all. So people's lives going through the disruption of hearing for 2 days in a row now that there could be power problems, let alone what might be happening deeper and colder into winter. Well, let's talk about Vivid instead of why are we here and how are you going to fix it? Last night we showed you a expert in the energy market who compared our current energy system to the third world.
The real danger is that, promises of renewable power never materialise, while the coal-fired generators and gas-fired generators are constantly under pressure to shut down.
What's needed is sensible, orderly change.
You do really need coal and gas for the time being.
But a lot of damage has already been done, and heavy industry will again be forced to shut down to keep the lights on.
We're really operating nowadays in a third world power system.
Danny Price was on Channel 9 last night. We showed you the highlights. We will talk to him in our own interview tonight on Paul Murray Live to hear about his idea or his view that you can't have a system that took 100 years to make and transition it in less than a generation. No doubt he'll cop it for talking to us, but I'm glad that he is, and we're going to have a chat to him a little bit later in the show.